Welcome back to BRAP. We did a show yesterday, almost 24 hours ago. And we got a lot to talk about. I mean, I don't even know where to begin, to be honest with everyone. Like, what's happening at Xbox, like, I feel like I'm living in Bizarro world. I don't want to believe that these things are happening, that they're true. This seems to be a PR nightmare. We're going to get into that here in just a bit. But want to give a big shout out to everyone in the live chat. Thank you so much for coming out and hanging out with us this evening. As always, I always appreciate the support. I'm going to drop the link here in the live chat. So do me a quick favor. Let everyone know we're live. Let everyone tweet out the link on Twitter or X, whatever the hell it's called these days. Share the link on your favorite social media platform. Hell, tweet a family member, or not tweet, text message a family member with the link. Tell them to get in here and listen to the show live. And if you're new, subscribe, hit the bell notification so you are alerted when we go live. Please do me a favor, hit that like button if you haven't done so already. Helps out the channel, helps other people find the channel as well. So, all right. So we have a great panel. We're going to have some other guests arriving us, and the BRAP panel members will be joining us here shortly as well. But I want to make some quick introductions. Want to introduce Nate, we've had on the show. Nate, welcome back to BRAP, sir. How are you?
I appreciate it, man. Yeah, man, it's good to be here. Like you said, a lot to talk about. A lot's been going on. I mean, I'm personally enjoying gaming in itself, you know, playing Stellar Blade and just having a ball between that and the Uden Chronicles, you know, me and my JRPGs. But yeah, I'm ready to get into it, man. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, you know, you mentioned Stellar Blade. It's a game I need to get to. I've been playing Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and did actually download Uden Chronicles on Game Pass. I've been playing a little bit of that as well. So, but I definitely need to get to Stellar Blade. Yeah, it's all my to-do list for sure. So, but Nate,
it's a top tier game.
Yes, absolutely. And the one thing I appreciate about you and Nate is that you play on the definitive gaming platform on planet Earth, and that is PC.
Absolutely. PC, baby.
Exactly.
Even though, you know, they doubt me on Twitter sometimes, you know, and a few of them like to try me, you know, and I got to let them know, you know.
You know, Nate,
of the PC guys like to try and come for me.
And Nate, all you need to do is screenshot your gaming room and just put it there on Twitter and just walk away. That's all you have to do.
Yeah.
You have probably one of the best gaming setups, one of the best gaming rooms that I've seen. It is like a, I don't even know how to describe it. It's amazing. It's really good.
Nah, man, I appreciate it.
Yeah. So, and then we have returning guests. We have with us Creative Kofi. Kofi, welcome back to BRAP. How are you today?
Thank you so much for having me back. I am under the weather, but I am caffeinated, so it's kind of going to be a balance of me. I originally wanted to scream and be very bombastic about all the news today, so I think it's going to have me a little bit tempered, but hopefully I could, you know, think through some of my most extreme thoughts, if you will. But no, great to hear from you, Nate. Great to chat with you, man. I've also kind of been a little buried under work, but I just got 4 games. You know, Front Mission First, Rise of the Ronin, Unicorn Overlord, and Stellar Blade. So they're all going to get played this month. I'm very excited.
As you should be. That's a solid rotation.
Yeah, that's
yes,
a pretty great rotation. A little vanillaware there. I see that. Okay, I like that. I have to go back and finish 13 Sentinel. Yeah, and Unicorn Overlord is another one that's on my radar.
Don't worry, Brap. I'm on the same thing with you with 13 Sentinels. I haven't finished it, but I was enjoying it just like you, and Unicorn Overlord is up there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And is anyone playing, I mean, outside of me, is anyone else playing Uden Chronicles? Because that just did come to Game Pass.
Yeah,
and I thought
not
it was
yet.
worth a
Yeah,
worth a
so
download.
I'm playing it. I bought it on PS5. I'm a
Okay, cool.
huge Suikoden fan,
Yes.
so
Yeah,
yeah.
that's my next purchase, I think.
Yeah. What are your thoughts so far, Nate? Because I've been playing it, and I think I probably did myself a little bit of disservice as I'm still playing Rebirth, going from Rebirth to Euden Chronicles, which is really a throwback to that side scroller, 2D JRPG type game, and it's really a spiritual successor to Suikoden. So I think I did myself a disservice, and I'm like, maybe I should have played this at a different time and not maybe simultaneously with Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, because there are elements of that game that I'm like, oh man, I wish it was,
Yeah,
heavy.
it's definitely gonna throw you. It's definitely gonna throw
Yeah.
you off between the two, because obviously one is a lot more heavily closer to being more action oriented, while the other is obviously a lot back to that traditional turn base, but giving you that Suikoden vibe with the combo attacks and all the other things, and really focusing on the story and the character development of all these characters that you get introduced to, and giving you an introduction to all these unique personalities and stuff, versus like one Final Fantasy giving you that core group that doesn't really change
Yeah.
over time. So yeah, I mean, they are going to be very different. Let's say you're doing it as a service, you just got to kind of balance it out. The thing that sucks with us having so many great games to be interested in is that you can end up playing one too long and be away from the other too long. I'm kind of falling into that now. Like, I've been loving Stellar Blade so much that I'm constantly playing it, and I was coming towards the end of Rise of the Ronin, which was also a ton of fun, and it's just like I gotta go back to it before I forget the controls and it gets messy, because being at the end of a game, going back to it after you've kind of forgotten is rough.
Right.
So yeah, I
It'll
definitely
be a
get
challenge,
it.
like, perfect dodges or something like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. Well, I probably put in about 2 hours into Euden Chronicles. So I really haven't spent too much time. It's just early observation of my experience that coming off Rebirth, I'm like, maybe I should have tabled Euden Chronicles after Rebirth and letting Rebirth digest a bit more.
I mean,
but
that's fair, because
Yeah.
I honestly, I'm not dropping it, but the expansiveness of Final Fantasy Rebirth kind of made me put it to the side, because I kind of felt like the game takes up so much that it needs that dedication. And when Rise of the Ronin came out, I was like not really wanting to push forward on it anymore. Not that I wasn't enjoying it. It's just like, dealing with what is it? What's his name? Chadwick or whatever his name is?
Yeah, Chadley, I think, right?
Yeah, Chadley.
oh,
Yeah,
Chadley,
dealing with Chadley.
I am not a Chadley fan. I'm like,
Yeah, me
dude,
neither.
I was like, go
leave
do
me
these
alone, Chadley.
37 things, and you're like, okay, Chadley.
I'm like,
Exactly.
Chadley, I have like 40 other things to take care of right now.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah,
You know,
so it's like running into all that and everything. Like, the game is beautiful. They really
Yeah.
let you go far into the distance. The draw
Yeah.
distance is impressive.
Yeah.
And then the new, more balanced performance mode they came out with
Yeah.
is really great. So honestly, I just feel like I'm going to get a better game going back to it, given, how great the performance update was. So yeah, but I completely get it. If you're stuck in Rebirth, I'd probably hone in on that, go ahead and get it done, and then full focus into Eden Chronicles if you can manage. But like I said, I'm the same way as you. Like, we're always rotating something, man. We just can't help it, especially when all these great games are coming out. Like, when we have access to all this greatness, you can't help it. But you also have the same problem I do. When we really love a game, like you loved Baldur's Gate, and I was a really big fan of Cyberpunk, which I recently modded with some of my favorite vehicles, it's hard not to go back and mess with those games. And you're like, I'm trying to stop myself from doing a full playthrough of this game I love so much, because I got these 37 other games I need to play.
Yeah. But I want to go back to Chadley real quick, because Chadley is the most annoying character for me in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and I wish I could. I wish I could actually communicate with Chadley and say, Chadley, I don't know if you know this, but there's this bad guy named Sephiroth that I'm trying to track down. Like, leave me the hell alone. Like, don't bother me.
Right.
He just
And I'll be calling you a lot.
yeah, he does. It's like, stop calling me. I got to put him on mute. So, I do want to welcome to the panel B Money. B, it's been a few weeks, man. Great to see you.
Yeah.
Hey.
What's going on, fellas?
You guys had a great draft.
We did.
You did, yes.
Pretty excited, man.
Those picks hit.
A great couple of days in Chicago. We including what the Bears did, Chicago Sky. We got Angel Reese and Carmella. So we got two back-to-back champions, two big girls, man at paint. You know what I mean? Chicago Sky put on a great show yesterday or the day before, I can't remember now. Blew out the Liberty. So, you know what I mean? We looking really good in Chicago. I'm feeling pretty good, man.
Could be WNBA champs this year, maybe.
Hey, never say never, man. It's a possibility.
Yeah, exactly. But no, be great to have you, and really happy to have you on this show because we do have a lot to talk about as it relates to Xbox. I can already, I have a feeling I know what you're going to say as we get into the topics with Xbox, but no, it's like I said, it's great to have you back on, and I do see someone in the live chat here. Look, Knights of the Realm, we don't run this kind of show. I don't know what you're doing in the live chat. You're a little bit all over the place. Maybe you need to put yourself in timeout. But what you're doing is not okay, and the mods will mod you out of here very quickly. So if you can behave and be an adult, you are more than welcome here to stay. If not, we'll see you out the door. So thank you. All right. So B, what some of us, let's say some of us, the panel here, we were talking about some of the games we're playing. What are you currently playing right now?
I've been playing Tales of Kenzara. I'm on the third chapter or third section of the game. So I've just been playing that. I've been pretty busy. You know what I mean? My kids are in high school and they have high school sports. So track is going on right now. So track is
wait, B, your kids are in high school?
Yeah, two of them are.
How did I miss that? I feel like feel like they were like in middle school, like just yesterday.
Yeah, man. And so I got track every other day, and then my daughter, she's in middle school, but she's playing flag football, so she has practice on Monday and Wednesdays, and then her games are on Sunday. So it's just I'm constantly doing something, constantly running around with them. But I figured what I should do is try to knock out some of the smaller games that I have, and I knew. Once I started that game, it wasn't that long. So I'm trying to work through that. I did hear you guys talking about Euden Chronicles. I did buy that. Haven't started it yet, though. That'll probably be like next on the list. I got to see what the run time is on it. But yeah, I've been trying to just take these small bites at games because I don't want to dive in anything too crazy just because I got so much going on. But hopefully, they'll be out of school in the next couple weeks, and things will calm down, and I'll be able to dive in.
Yeah, no, I hear you, I totally get. I totally get it with the sports activities. I've children as well, and it's like we're in the middle of baseball, soccer, and all that. It just it gets crazy. It gets a little hectic, but I do want to get to Xbox. I don't even know where to begin. We did a special BRAP last night, myself and Game Logic, and we talked about the announcement to the closure of 4 studios. Logic made a great point in that show that Microsoft has essentially closed about 50% of the studios that made up ZeniMax, and then we talked about how Xbox got here, like what happened. we walked through that. We talked about the performance of the market. We talked about the last Q3 numbers that came out, and it just I just feel like I feel like I'm living in a bizarre world. I said this earlier at the start of the show. This just doesn't seem real to me, because on one hand, I'm looking at a very successful company, Microsoft, valued at $1 trillion. Okay, they gave us Windows. We had the Azure. They had their AI. And yes, I understand they've had some misses as a company. Windows Phone. What was the streaming platform they had? What was that called again? It was
Mixer.
Mixer. Thank you, Mixer.
The Zune.
The Zune. Thank you, Nate. The Zune. And look, I believe that there's smart people at this company. And this is where I'm like, this is where I'm scratching my head trying to figure out what the hell's happening over at Xbox. And I want to believe there's competent people there, but I'm not getting the competent people vibe from what's happening or what's happened the last 3 months of this year, and even before that. I mean, I would get whiffs of that with some of the decisions that they made, and we're 10 years into Phil Spencer's leadership at Xbox, and we'll talk about the Xbox leadership here in a bit, but something just seems so off, and I want to believe that there's competent people there. I want to give them the benefit of the doubt that these people are C-level executives. They make a lot of money. Phil's been in the Xbox division for 20 plus years. Matt Booty's been in gaming for quite some time. Aaron Greenberg's been around forever, it seems like. For 20-something years at Xbox. Something's amiss here. And I've gotten to the point where I'm saying to myself a couple things, that there could be need for a change at leadership at this point. But also, I want to go back to the community. I'm going to pick on the Xbox community here a little bit, and more Xbox-centric content creators. They need to stop. And not all Xbox content creators, but the ones that have spun things, the ones that have spread misinformation, disinformation, the ones that have, done a lot of the PR marketing work for Xbox. They've done a lot to harm the brand. And I do believe, and Logic talked about this last night, that Microsoft or Xbox seems to be paying a lot of attention to the community. They're getting bad feedback, and they're not paying attention to the rest of the market. And I think that when a lot of these guys aren't holding the brand accountable, this is what we get. I don't see the accountability. Yeah, go ahead.
Whose fault is that, though? Whose fault is that?
Yeah,
we can point the fingers at content creators all we want. But at the end of the day, Microsoft is $1 trillion company.
Yes, absolutely.
When are they going to be accountable for what's going on in their house? Because there's a bunch of people that spread misinformation and just spew things out of their mouth. But it's Microsoft's fault. They aren't controlling it. They allow it to happen. You know what I mean? So if you're not going to step out in front of it and provide the message to your consumers and to your community on your own, then it's your fault that we're at this point.
Yeah. Well, let me.
It's not the content creators. The content creators are doing just like anybody else would. They're taking the opportunity to profit off of a $1 billion company who's not doing what they're supposed to be doing. That's their fault.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I don't disagree, B. But B, I want to go to you first, and I'll get to the rest of the panel here. When you heard about the layoffs, what did you think? What came to mind? Or the studio closures, I should say. We'll talk about layoffs in a minute, but
major disappointment. You know what I mean? Just simply because, a lot of talk before Microsoft started having all these acquisitions is, we knew a lot of these studios weren't, having high sales as far as just Bethesda, the Bethesda studios, from Arcane to even Machine Games. Like Machine did pull from it could have been better just based on if market. Even what Doom did, for it. So it's like, you see the studio closures, but the initial thought when they were purchased is that, okay, the studios were struggling prior to the purchase. Now that they have Microsoft's backing, to worry about studios getting closed, they'll be able to pursue their creative ambitions, and then we'll get great content from it. But to see them close studios, Tango being one of them, that just put out this remarkable game, it's getting all this high praise throughout the industry. It's disappointing, and it's embarrassing. You know what I mean? Because it's like you spent all this money to garner all these IPs and put them under this Xbox umbrella, only to get rid of all the creative talent that made the IP. So now what? Now you're just a holder of all the jewels, but nobody to put them out in the market. It's really confusing. It's really frustrating. There's rumblings that this will continue, and no one can be surprised that it will. When you go out and spend all that money on all these acquisitions and they're not bearing fruit, the first thing that any company is going to do is get rid of all of their talent, because that's what costs them the most money. You know what I mean? All the high level execs, all the studio heads, the people that are put in place to put out this content, those are the ones going to go first, because you're going to get rid of that payroll. You can, that comes straight off the bottom line. So when you can do that and kind of, appease the shareholders, that's the first thing you're going to do. So I would assume this will continue. This is just the start of this. We have to remember that Microsoft just reported their quarterly earnings, and they weren't looking good if you minus the APK numbers from it. So we knew things were going to be coming down the pipeline, and I think this is just the beginning.
All right, I want to go to Nate. Nate, you heard the layoffs. What were your thoughts when you? Keep saying layoffs, but we essentially layoffs and them closing these studios.
Yeah, man. I mean, like B Money said, man, disappointment. But honestly, like, the worst level of I told you so. Yeah, I mean, we were talking about this before the acquisition happened. Like, we knew how dangerous this amount of money was going to be. When tons of people were out here championing, this acquisition. How just trying to relay how much of an issue that purchase of 70 billion was going to be versus revenue and return. Something y'all talk about a lot on this show. Your ROI, your return on your investment. These people want their money. And somebody brought up a good point the other day. They were like, people were kind of on this whole Microsoft's got infinite money thing. And, the running joke is that, do you think that they became, a $1 trillion company by, letting their investments sit out there and not getting that money back? And it's like, no, somebody got to pay the bill. That's always going to happen. Sooner rather than later, typically with these situations. And sadly, while prior to the ABK deal, it looked like Microsoft was really on the right track. They were ramping everything up. They were supporting all these studios, decently at least. Making sure everybody was as on track as they could be as far as, their pipeline story goes. They really were kind of honing in and focusing on everything. It seemed like they were really trying to get things together. And it just, I don't know, somebody at Microsoft just seemed overly hungry for this ABK deal. He wanted it so bad. And I just think there was a severe miscalculation, clearly, on the amount of revenue, considerations for stuff like putting, Call of Duty into the service for Game Pass. And it's like, how did, like you said, you want to believe, and you do believe that a ton of really smart people work for these people. Um, but I believe part of that problem is that ultimately, I mean, you can have a million PhDs in the room, but if they don't know the subject that they're looking at, thoroughly the way that we do, you're not going to see certain things, right? Um, like we saw the writing on the wall before this even happened, right? You talked about the vertical mergers and all this other stuff, you know, trying to kind of put people on game. And, ultimately the problem, like you said, in the streets was, between the soothsayers, the people who it's all good, Microsoft about to win, people seeing this as an absolute win for so long, laughing, trying to laugh at, PlayStation fans. And when Microsoft gets this, COD's gonna run everything over and they're gonna get the DLC deal and everybody's gonna run to play Xbox and all this stuff, like all these crazy things that people were saying. And I was like, I don't really think y'all understand how this is about to go, and again, I've been on record stating like I was cool with the acquisitions that took place for Microsoft prior to the ABK deal. I felt like it was a good fit. You know, ZeniMax was, like I said, in financial trouble. They were up for sale, and they worked with them plenty before, so I felt like that was a solid fit. They doubled down with the Obsidian prior to that, so they had the two people in the game that make those type of games. Double Fine to bring that quirky mark to everything. Like honestly, it just looked like they were making some solid strategic decisions, and then just got greedy in the end. Like, what else can we get? Can we really go this far? Can we really pull this much? And it was like nobody considered what would actually happen after you got it. And it was just so much about taking it and getting it that it just seems like it just went over everybody's head. And then now, like I said, you're seeing the sacrifices happen to people's livelihood, you know what I mean? Even though they are successful, talented studios, and they're still being punished. And the story prior to all these layoffs and all this other stuff was, I mean, you would have looked at the end of last year, right? When, all that stuff kind of finally went through. It's about to be the year of Xbox. They're about to go hard. You know what I'm saying? They're about to be releasing games left, right, and center. And it's just like, again, we wanted that. We wish that was the case. But again, I was like, something was just bothering me with that deal. And I was like, man, that's a lot of overhead. There's definitely going to be a lot of redundancies in this purchase, and they're going to want to move some of their people in, and like all the things that take place during a typical merger on top of all the other issues they're going to run into, which again they're seeing now. They purchased them, also a big thing that was stated, for the mobile division, right? And now again they stated in one of the releases today in the Jason Schreier that they knew that the growth for mobile wasn't significant because the data goes back as far as 2021. Like they knew beforehand where the growth was, if any, and it was single digit, if any. So pretty much flatlined. Same thing for Game Pass and so on and so forth. And like I said, we were talking about them bringing Call of Duty into the fold, into Game Pass. And now, like we said, that's a very realistic conversation of like, why would you even do that? Because now you're running into an issue where, you're essentially running into the issue we said would happen. Why would you do that to cannibalize, again, the thing that we've said for so long about Game Pass? You're bringing in all these first party titles that could be big sellers, that would normally be big sellers for you, and you got a twofold issue eating away at your your sales hardware wise, because you release everything on PC day one, and Game Pass, so everything is in the service. So these people who typically or potentially would have bought these games or set aside money to purchase these games and give you these sales are no longer doing that. And now you're seeing the consequences of all this revenue going out the window, and they're making cuts in places they definitely should not be. And we're seeing people suffer for it, man. And it's just, it's sad to see. We don't want it. We wanted nothing but the best. Let's get that straight, for Xbox, which you again have been on record in here with Logic. I know I've been in the chat, where you guys are like, no, we want this better. We want the like, you guys think we're criticizing them, and it's like, no, we want. No. I wish they released 5 hot titles right now. I wish. I wish they were going crazy. I wish they were undeniable. I wish I couldn't walk in my door and not have an Xbox. I wish I was crazy to not have an Xbox. I wish, but it's not like that. And no matter how much I wish, you know what I'm saying, it's not going to come true like that. And it's like, and to get to the thing, like you said, I know, and I agree with B Money, it is Microsoft's fault, but these people who were saying all the praises and stuff when we knew it was trouble and things weren't where they were supposed to be, Microsoft a lot of the times was clearly receiving that message as they were doing the right thing, because then they were puzzled when they put certain things out and then the reception was terrible and they were lost. Like, wait, what do you mean you guys aren't satisfied? You're not loving the current state of things? It's not great? Because if you listen to these shows and these people who, are typically friends with Phil, they were constantly like, it's good, E3 is about to go crazy. All this showcase is going to be amazing. All this is going crazy. You would have swore Xbox was in the best position ever until they weren't. But we knew better, and that's the difference.
That's
my whole thing, man.
That's a fair point, and thank you for bringing up like the fact that on this show we've been critical of Xbox, but we've been critical of Xbox not because of Xbox hate the way people think. The criticism has come from their performance in the market based on tangible evidence, data, their own quarterly reports. And speaking of quarterly reports, I do want to introduce this gentleman here. We have with us, he is a financial analyst or a finance person or a bean counter. We have with us David Faulkner. Falky, how are you? Welcome to BRAP.
Hi. Thank you for having me back. Pleasure to be here. It's a beautiful Thursday on the southern half of the planet and on the eastern half of the planet as well. Beautiful sunny day. Glad to be around friends. Apologies for my tardiness. I was tied up counting beans for someone else at the previous engagement.
That's great. Falky, it's great to have you back. Your timing is perfect. Considering everything that's happening right now, your timing is perfect. And I do want to get your thoughts here in just a bit. But I do, as I mentioned too, like our criticism, we want Xbox to do better. We want Xbox to compete with Sony. We don't want Xbox to leave the console space. When you have two competitors that are competing for your dollars, that is beneficial to you as a consumer. So I do want to go to Kofi real quick. So Kofi, what were your thoughts about the studio closures here? Did we lose Kofi?
Sorry, I'm muted.
Oh, that's okay.
I'm trying
Kofi.
to organize this as best as possible.
That's okay.
The closures really, really pissed me off. Of course, I think like most of us here, I'm a huge advocate for Japanese developers. I feel like their legacy is so important, but obviously, they kicked off so many great generations. So, I just want to specifically think about Tango and how, if we were in some other world where Tango was able to thrive and able to become, something more significant than, what it was, I think Xbox really would have an opportunity to reach out to some of these smaller developers that never get enough funding and make them something much more appreciated worldwide. So I'll try to give an example. There's a action RPG that comes out in Japan in July, October in the United States. It's called Reinatus, and it has some character designers from Final Fantasy, what was Final Fantasy Versus 13. And just because of the aesthetic, kind of reminding people of like gameplay of Kingdom Hearts, it's garnering a lot more attention. This developer has constantly tried to release new IPs for games that just don't have enough dev time, or they just don't have a budget. And I think in the last 7 years, they've done 5 new IPs. They're fun games, but they're incomplete. And I look at some of these studios that just need a little bit more time to get the execution right, and they can make a difference. But the biggest problem we have is Microsoft's greater vision is in direct conflict with a traditional Xbox model with, selling games individually. And I find it so troubling that if the subscription-based model is such a great opportunity, why does Xbox not use other streaming platforms as an example of what success could look like? Obviously there's not a lot of successful gaming streaming platforms, but for other entertainment like shows and movies, we've seen things like Disney Plus, even though I'm sure they've lost subscribers over this whole COVID, situation. Because of all of their content, whether it's Marvel movies or classic Disney films, they have really made a name for themselves in a short amount of time compared to, Netflix or the Hulus or, Max of the world. So I find it, so troubling because I feel like the community was fooled into thinking that Xbox was really ready to commit to a sacrifice the dollar but gain the greater market share. I kind of think of, I'll try not to like talk economics because I'm pretty sure Falke could do this much better than me, but I think of a market like I have a family member who used to work in the solar panel market. This is like maybe 15 years ago, and he was working on the United States West Coast, and he ended up really struggling because there were some significant manufacturers in China that were willing to sell panels at a loss just for market share, and so that they could get a bigger piece of the pie and eventually get a bigger piece of the revenue. And I think a lot of Xbox fans, or even some of us, might say, okay, if you're willing to lose the dollar for years on end, eventually people will subscribe to your platform because whether there's a deal or there's great IPs. And just as we get to this point, we all know that Hi-Fi Rush is like game of the year contender, mascot potential for an entire platform, could create spin-offs. I've seen fans of just individual characters that wanted to see a spin-off game. It just strikes me as so disappointing. So there's just I have a lot of anger and angst, but at the same time, I stopped subscribing to Xbox Live Gold many years ago for similar reasons with IP, not producing the types of IPs that I liked. So it's a situation where I'm really already at rock bottom when I think of the Xbox ecosystem. But now it just feels disrespectful to. We've seen some of these, tweets of Phil Spencer being at Tango, and I'm sure all the other studios, just like in the last 6 months or September, and then to turn around and nix them so quickly. It just feels like a punch in the face, man. So yeah, I'm pretty disappointed about it all.
Kofi, let me ask you something. This is something that, by the way, I do want to welcome to the show. I want to welcome 2 more panel members here. I want to welcome Game Logic. Game Logic, welcome to the show. Glad you're here. I know you were going to use PTO today, but nevertheless, happy to see you here. How are you this evening?
Good. I saw the announcement and I was like, "This is the dream team." I'm like, are we going to the Olympics tonight? So I decided I had to call in. I couldn't watch this from the sidelines. Plus, if I wasn't here, then BRAP would have had to talk to me for 2 hours tomorrow to debrief me on what had happened on the podcast. So I figured I'd just come here and get it firsthand.
Yeah, you know what? No lies, because I would have called you. Say, hey, here's what happened yesterday. No, that's funny. I also want to welcome Mag. Mag has just joined us as well.
Yes,
Mag. Yes. Should I refer to you as the Macho Mag?
Yeah, that's going to be one of my other alter egos for whenever I'm pissed off about something. But yeah, listen, I'm glad to be here. I didn't realize there are going to be so many people here. I come here, I'm like, well, wow, there's 7 people on this panel. Outstanding. And I'm sure you guys have already been talking for about 45 minutes, but I'm going to jump in at some point here and then and get my thoughts in here about what's been going on in the last couple days and what's to come. And it ain't going to be pretty for a lot of reasons. But either way, we'll get into it. You get to me when you get to me, brother.
Hey, and Mag, I'm sure people are hating you right now, as they always do, it seems like. At least on one side.
Oh, no. I've lost so many followers today, dozens and dozens of complete asshats that I'm actually glad. Thank you, actually, for unfollowing me. Because I can't see a world where you can, like, I understand, like, I'm not going to get into this, but I understand what consolidation is. I understand how it works. I am an executive for a corporation. I understand how some things work. But when the way that you present these things and the way that it was done and the nefarious fashion in which this all went down, it was all a lie. And they didn't have a firm grasp as to what the business was all about. Reforge Gaming was talking about it today. It was almost comical when he was talking about Phil Spencer saying, "I don't know how to gauge success of a game." Like they didn't have a game plan. The game plan was buy everything, see what happens, and just kind of brute force your way into some kind of a second place instead of third place. I don't know what the plan was, but you know what? It didn't work. And the thing is, like I said, they presented a culture of come here, we'll give you freedom of creativity to flourish and give us interesting IP and product and idea. Nope, sorry, actually, if you're not performing like Call of Duty, get the F out. Right? And this is what they did. And this is the way it looks at it. And I got people all day. Like I said, I'm not going to get into it. I got people all day unfollowing me, this and that. And I'm like, good, get out. Go away. If you have no balls, go away. You're still defending this? You're absolutely out of your mind. Hold the line. Hold my crotch. Okay?
God.
I love King David, by the way. I love King David. But you know what I'm saying? King David is a friend of mine. And I'm not talking about King David. I'm talking about these other idiots going, hold the line, Mag, you fraud. And I'm like, I'm a fraud? Are you kidding me? After what's been going on and what's continuing to go on? I'm not saying walk away from Xbox. I'm just saying, if you agree with this, you got to be completely out of your mind. Colt is getting it left, right, and center. Rand is getting it left, right, and center. Jez, myself, a bunch of people. Now, mind you, in the last year or so, you could call me whatever the hell you want to call me, Ponybot, this and that, whatever. But I've basically inadvertently have abandoned the Xbox console anyway. I've been gaming 90% of my time on the PlayStation 5 because it's just that's where the better experience was for me since the beginning of 2023. And well, it shows if you go look at my trophies. I'm having a great time, having whatever. And and so like I see what's happening, and I said, listen, man, Xbox has a lot of hard work to do and this and that to get me to go back to the ecosystem and enjoy it. I got my Series X behind me, I just don't turn it on. And the more that this happens, and the more that I see that those interesting IPs from people, well, from X companies like Tango GameWorks and everything else, and then they're going to focus on harder. They're going to focus on more surefire IP. That to me sounds a lot like risk-averse Hollywood. And I said it in a tweet earlier today. I said risk-averse art is the death of art. I'll let you get back to the show.
Yeah, thank you, Mag. You know, Mag, this kind of feels like Crossfire. You mentioned like 7 people here. Yeah, this feels like what tomorrow's going to be like on Mooch's channel. But I do want to get to Falky here. Falky, how you said something, and help me remember what you said.
Said a lot of things, BRAP.
Yes, you did. yeah. But what did you say about post-acquisition ABK in terms of they're going to incur additional cost, operational costs, things like that? You said something to that effect. Am I hopefully I'm correct there in that. But please go through that and explain how we got here, kind of what may have led to the decision to close these studios.
Comedy of errors is probably a good way of putting it, but post consolidate any major corps, most of us, in fact all of us on this panel here will have experienced it in one way or another at different levels and multiple different levels. As soon as one major company consolidates with another major company, there's duplication of roles and whatnot that occur. There's redundant positions become part of the deal that need to be cleaned out, and then you get into the what makes money, what doesn't make money, change in strategies, change in plans, performances, and all that sort of stuff. There's inevitably people that will not want to follow and come over to a new company for various different reasons. They'll take it as an opportunity to find something else, another challenge, or to retire or whatnot. But the the main things that come out of it is there's always a cost reduction program in the first 18 months. And then there's always a personnel reduction program that follows, and it is inevitable it will happen that way. What's come out of this rapid growth program that Xbox has undertaken with, and I'll stand by this because I've said this on a number of occasions, leadership that don't know what they're doing in that area. You've got to bring in people who know what they're doing when you're doing mergers and acquisitions and expansion programs and rapid upscales and all the rest of it. You can't just flick a switch for someone who knows how to deliver a game and expect them to know the ins and outs of the strategies and whatnot that's required to do these complex mergers and acquisitions. And I think it was laid pretty clear over the last 18 months when Xbox and Microsoft trying to buy Activision where the deficiencies lay. The outcome is that you've then got to make it make money, and if you can't make it make money, then you got to start cutting costs. And inevitably, the first place they look, what's the biggest cost to an organisation? It's labour force. First place they go, and they shouldn't. They should have a better plan in place before getting to that point. But if you've got redundant positions in back of house, you can't carry that. If you've got business units that aren't performing where they're supposed to be, profit centers and they're just acting as a cost center, then you need to make the hard decisions on those as well. I'm still of the opinion a lot of this could have been avoided if they'd have just had a better plan and a better think about what the hell they were trying to do, and whether it was sustainable and what the downside was if it wasn't. It's great to have confidence and back yourself 110% that this is the plan, this is the pathway, everybody's on board, like a lot of people were 6 months ago, 9 months ago. It was, yep, this is great, we'll have all these games and all this stuff's going to come back and they're going to invest all this money and it's going to be brilliant. And then the purse strings got shut, and then all of a sudden they've got to fund it themselves, and there's no endless amount of cash flow because other parts of Microsoft are starting to hurt, and they've got targets they got to meet, and it's a big organization with a massive overhead. ABK can't sustain that. ABK was designed on a small overhead to be profitable around 3 pillars, business units, and maybe 2 or 3 successful titles in each business unit, and was profitable at that point. When you absorb it in, you got those massive overheads and all the other stuff to deal with. And all of a sudden your revenue stream is corrupted because you're then having to back out a heap of stuff that was previously a genuine cash flow revenue and is now an internal offset. What choice have they got? You can see from the numbers of the last 2 quarterly reports, it's just bleeding harder than they thought it was going to, and the cost of that is still going. And I hate to be the one to bring this damn thing back up, but the FTC's still got to go to trial for this acquisition in August. So I don't know where this ends.
I completely forgot about
ending. I can't see the ending from here being anything positive. And that's, again, I was on with Mooch last week, and I've been on a few other conversations, and that we're not here, and people were talking about this before. We're not here hammering Xbox because we hate them. We're not here talking about Xbox because we want them to fail. We're here because we love gaming as our hobby. We love gaming as our relaxation, or it's this thing that we do with our friends that we can bond over and have a good time with, right? Most people don't care where the game is played in terms of, is it on a Switch, is it on a PlayStation, is it on an Xbox? If it's a great game, we'll play it wherever it exists, and we'll find a way of playing that game. The problem has always been, for the last few years, and people say they want Xbox to compete. Well, we just want them to do well so that we can continue to enjoy great games across different ways of them being delivered. PlayStation has always been at a quality point where sometimes it is boring as crap. You will get the same narrative-driven blueprint rolled out with a different color on it and a different character in it, and someone's got a different voice on it. But you know what you get from a PlayStation game. You also know what you get from a Nintendo game. It's usually fun. It's a little bit over the top. It's, you know, Mario or Zelda or something like that. But they're aiming at a market segment as well that you can enjoy. Xbox was always you want to do multiplayer online, Xbox. Just go and play Halo or Gears or something else that's coming out there. And they had a market niche, and we all enjoyed playing it. I spent thousands of hours playing Halo in the early days. It was brilliant. And in the last 5 years, it's like they just went, we don't even want to try. We'll just throw money at it and hope that that works. And that plan didn't have a safety net. And that's where I emphatically believe that Xbox's senior leadership, Phil and co, have not realized that they weren't knowledgeable in some of these avenues, and they failed to get people on board who were, and now we're seeing the outcome of that. And it's horrible to consider that in all real possibility at this point, because of how fast this thing is deteriorating, they may not have third place in 12 months. And they very well may not even exist beyond being a publisher, and have 4 or 5 in-house studios and be comparable to the size of someone like Capcom. Like, the deterioration at the moment, the trajectory is looking horrible. In 2 years' time, the joke might not be they've only got Halo, Gears, and Forza. That might be all we get: Halo, Gears, and Forza. And I look, it's got to be. Phil's got to put his head on the block here, and he's got to take that whole team with him. And if they don't clean out the leadership and put some people in there who know what they're doing to steer it through a crisis, you're not going to fix the problem with the same people who created the problem, because this is not the opportunity for them to learn from their mistakes. That's it. They got to go.
Yeah. We'll
How
talk
long
about,
do you think? Oh, I'm sorry. Really
I was going to say we'll talk about that here. We'll talk about that here in just a sec. I think, Kofi, you're going to ask him about how long maybe does the leadership stay in place. I want to table that real quick, Kofi, because
okay,
I'm going to get to the other panel members here and get their thoughts on some of the things that Falky said and the closures. So I want to go to Game Logic next, and then we'll go to Mag. Logic, any additional thoughts on what Falky said, or do you have anything in addition to what we talked about last night?
I mean, I think at some point tonight we need to explore a few things. Like I think, and this is not to throw slander at anyone or even to throw slander at myself. Like I think what has gone wrong has been well versed, right, over the last few days. I think a couple things have been left on the table that haven't been addressed, and that's yea, verily, this is a misstep. This is a problem. Some of it, created, out of Xbox's own, kind of stepping their foot in it, and pointing themselves in this direction. Some of this by things that I believe were out of their control, as they normally would be within a corporate structure. But one thing is the way forward, or what the future holds. And I'm not a super huge fan of speculation, but what needs to be contended with is the fact that forever in a day, despite the fact that they have been in third place in terms of console install base, which we have constantly said and we've covered well, they have been second in revenue, and that hasn't changed, and it's not necessarily going to change based on the actions of the last couple of days. And so what does that mean? Somehow, despite having the smallest install base amongst the 3 primary console platform competitors, they've always managed to keep going. Now, some of that has been because of things like accountability margin and, stealing out of the Azure guys' pockets, right, to pay for cloud support, which I think a lot of those checks are coming due, and I think that's, what we're seeing a lot of now. But like, a discussion has to be had around, well, they're not just going to turn off that spigot, right, in a day. So what does that mean? We have often talked about sustainability, which everyone on this panel should know that is one of my pet peeve terms right now, right up there, along with people who say ATM machine and CAC card. But I mean, the question is, what does sustainability really mean for a $3 trillion company? Kofi made reference to before. I mean, Game Pass has absolutely been a loss leader strategy. There is no question about that. Anybody who still questions that, I think, is kind of out to lunch. Like, there has been a deliberate intent to be willing to, I would say, to lose money overall. So even if you make Xbox as a P&L center, like marginally profitable or however you want to color it, it's all done. It's all been done by, right, I don't want to say cooking the books, but like moving peanuts under the shell, right? Costs
Creative accounting.
Right. Costs that would normally be allocated to Xbox as a P&L center have not been allocated to a P&L. So that is what accountability margin means. The use of that term on that leak slide means that they have not been charged the full cost, not been made to bear the full cost of all of the services that they consume. So, right. So that it was definitely a loss leader play. While that may be encountering adversity, like I said, it's not going to just come to a halt right in a single day. So the question becomes, regardless of what we say about the leadership, does Phil need to go? Matt Booty need to go? Bring in Strauss-Zelnick, which is the right answer. It's not questionable. I won't entertain any dissension from that.
So Strauss, who would report to Strauss then? Who would be his number two?
I mean, what is the play from here? Because I mean, Xbox earns revenue still at a point that, like, any of the other any other top remaining 7 competitors, now that they've gobbled up Activision when it used to be 10, right? Any of the remaining 7 competitors would die for, and you can't just throw that out the window, right? As a quantifiable factor. So I just think that's one of the things maybe to walk across too.
No, Logic. That's great points there. I do want to go to Mag here. Mag, you ranted a little bit when you joined the show, but what other thoughts do you have about the closures and some of the things that Falke, Logic, the panel have said so far?
Well, the first thing is that now that I'm settled in here, I came in a little bit hot, but I got to say that, first of all, some of these things, when it comes to mass consolidation, we understand that there's going to be a trimming of the fat and, of course, redundancies in jobs, right? And job descriptions, everything else. You're not going to have 2 CFOs doing the exact same thing if you're merging 2 companies together. I understand how that works. Same thing with the workforce. However, my issue with the entire thing is that you're stunting. You came in with a false pretense. That's basically what I wanted to say, is that the philosophy, like Phil's philosophy, was 100% a great idea. But the thing is, Phil is no longer steering the boat. I think his reins have been pulled away from him, and now what's ended up happening is that they've taken over. Microsoft has taken over. It's abundantly clear that this is exactly what's happened. Now, that being the case, his vision is now out the window. So it basically came across as, we came in one way saying, okay, listen, we're going to acquire this and acquire that, and we're going to do this, and then we're going to create all these studios, and they're going to be all this creative freedom to be able to release all these interesting IP, like I'd said about 10 minutes ago. And then the direct opposite happened. Then the corporate structure came in and said, yeah, this is not sustainable. The Game Pass model. Now, the thing is, it's funny. The Game Pass model, this is mirroring Hollywood, right? And I know a lot of people in the Hollywood business. The only reason why Amazon is doing what they're doing, and the reason why they're not really stepping back from the subscription service with their shows and their movies and whatever else, is because they're using it as a tax relief, basically, for the actual company, being Amazon, doing the delivery service. And so a lot of that money gets move over there, so they don't have to pay so many taxes. Right? That's why they put $500 million into Rings of Power. It makes sense from that point of view as they continue to make trillions. However, what Microsoft did not understand, or maybe they did understand and they just didn't care, by absorbing all these companies, you also absorbed not only a return of investment that they have to make back for Microsoft being able to purchase this, but they also, I think they sort of underestimated the overhead of running All these buildings, all these studios, the rent, the staff, and that's another thing I'm going to get into very briefly here. And this is where I think the next step is going to go, is that I think they underestimated how much people cost, especially now in an industry with a lot of developers are literally, and I speak to developers all the time. I spoke to a bunch of people today that are working at some are working at Bethesda, some at Xbox Game Studios have actually contacted me today. And I can tell you right now that Bethesda, by the way, is currently, I told you BRAP earlier, they're currently handing out papers, packages, retirement packages, essentially, or severance packages for staff right now as we speak. And the more of that's going to come today. It hasn't come to light yet. More of that's going to come tomorrow. But I have spoken to a lot of developers who said we are literally pricing ourselves out of the industry. We're pricing ourselves out of a career because they're costing too much money. When they say something like, "Oh, Spider-Man costs $400 million," it's unattainable to get that kind of money. It's not the game that costs that much. It's the people that cost that much. Not all of it, but let's say about 70% of it are the salaries of people, overblown salaries, in a high inflation market right now. That doesn't make any sense. And so what's going to happen is these corporations are looking at that. They're saying, okay, well, the biggest problem that we're having right now are the people. It's not the game. It's not this. It's not that. It's not even the critical reception. It's the people that are the problem. And then you could see that this is what's happening. So now when Xbox, going back to Xbox, when they came in there and they said, listen, this is what we're doing. We're offering a safe haven for creativity and blah, 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 blah. And then all of a sudden the corporate structure came in and actually completely squashed that and said, yeah, well, you know what? We're canning this. A great studio like Tango Gameworks made incredible games as far as I'm concerned. Not everyone was an absolute 10 out of 10, but they did a great job with those games. Arcane, are you kidding me, with some of those games that they worked on? And apparently they had 2 more games in the works, which you'll never see the light of day. And then other studios are struggling right now too. The subscription model service outside of Netflix are failing. They're not doing well. They're losing money. Disney especially. They're just bleeding money at this point. Disney's history when it comes to that. I wouldn't be surprised if that model completely goes away and it ends up being they'll release something on Disney Plus 2 years after the fact or whatever else, and it'll just be sort of sitting there. But that's a whole different story. They're bleeding money because of a culture war that they've decided to wage on the world. That's their own problem. But the Xbox thing, that's not the case. The problem is that you have these games that are costing so much money with staff that cost so much money, and then you're putting in a subscription service and you're not getting the return on investment because not enough people are subscribing. You could see that this project is failing, and you could see it was starting to falter a couple of years ago. You see it sort of stuttering, and now you fast forward, it's 7 years, guys. 2017, and it's not going anywhere. Right? And so that is not the growth I called that a long time ago on XNC, much to the chagrin of a lot of people. And I said the growth is not there. And it's not, and then they're going to do something about it. They're going to have to go back to the some kind of more traditional model, or they're going to have to do something radical, which is kind of what they're doing. It's not really radical, but more are coming. It's going to be more abundantly clear. And now the thing is, what we're seeing right now is Bethesda. We haven't even seen what ABK is going to do. What's going to happen with them? ABK's investment was literally 7 times what Bethesda's investment is. And if they don't make those kind of returns, you're going to see way more cuts coming. And then they're going to focus on the big hits. Okay, like we just said about 15 minutes ago, the Halo Forza Gears, but even the Halo Forza Gears aren't even pulling in the numbers anymore. So where is this going? It's a very interesting conversation. I'm not doom and glooming Xbox, but they're not. I think that they've lost their vision as to where they're going, and I think that they're pulling at every string possible to see or throw the spaghetti at the wall and see which strands stick at this point. Because I just think they just really are unfocused, and when you're unfocused, that sends a confused message to the customer. And when you confuse the customer, customers will not give up their hard-earned money. And I can tell you, in this day and age, especially in North America, okay, money is becoming more and more scarce. It's going to become more of a situation, and people are going to be a lot more frugal when it comes to their spending, especially for what I would consider luxury items. I got an arcade behind me. That's a luxury item. Okay, and it is what it is. But those are luxury items. But people will be a lot more hesitant if the messages aren't clear. And right now, the messages aren't clear. And that is essentially the problem on top of it. And people have lost trust and focus on what's going on. Did I say amen or something? Nobody said it.
No.
Oh, sorry.
No. I was actually muted. I was
Agreed.
going to say something. You said something about messaging, Mag. I believe you just said something about messaging. And I was reading as you were talking, I was also reading what Jez Corden had tweeted out earlier today, that he had heard from Xbox devs that they feel unsupported. How
does that help?
Yeah.
Right? How does that help the situation when they feel that they're unappreciated and unsupported, and then you see what happens to your buddies in the office down the hall? How do you feel going, holy crap, how's this game going to what's going to happen to us if these games don't make margins that Call of Duty's doing? I think they're looking at everything as Call of Duty and Candy Crush at this point.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the dynamic it's going to cause amongst the engineering staff of the development teams, right, is going to make things more problematic. So in software development, we have this thing called velocity, which is basically the productivity of any given team, right? However you do it, let's just assume that you're doing agile and you're compartmentalizing time by sprints, right? So people's focus and keeping their heads down and getting work done is what you're relying upon to make schedule. When something like this happens, at the magnitude it happens, and I think that's one of the key things, right, to make sure that gets discussed. I've seen a lot of just quite frankly very disgusting thoughts about, this is business as usual. It's happening all around the industry. This is Microsoft getting ahead of things. Dum-dums. What you need to acknowledge is that Bethesda was 8 studios. And in one fell swoop, not by personnel, because I think I've estimated that about the number of people who have been let go is around 300, that in one fell swoop, they eradicated 50% of what used to be known as Bethesda. And so when that type of thing happens within an engineering organization, what's going to happen is every development team, with the exception of the people who are really fat, the people that Matt Booty refers to as on the black hole projects or on the $1 billion franchises, the World of Warcraft people, the Diablo people, the Call of Duty people. I'm not even necessarily certain that the Overwatch people feel like they're in that group right now. But what everybody's doing, number one, you're going to have a ton of people that are spending a ton of time during the workday getting their resume cleaned up and stepping outside to make phone calls, right? And receive phone calls for job applications. So you're going to have a lot of people that are highly distracted. What has been Xbox's number one problem for the last, exacerbated for the last 4 years, definitely, but for the last 10, is managing their production pipeline.
Yes.
What is going to happen when your total velocity, your total productivity, your total level of effort, right, is highly distracted from achieving short-term goals? You're going to have a tendency for projects to not make schedule.
That's what I was getting to. That's what I was getting to in terms of their mixed messaging, because I think that they've lost focus as to what direction they seem to be going. And I think it's because of this corporate structure. They look at let's do Windows Phone, didn't work out. Let's do Zoom, or not Zoom. What the hell is that stupid thing they did? They did Mixer. They did that Zumba thing, whatever the hell it was called, the thing that was supposed to go up against the iPod. And they just, okay, it didn't work, throw it out. Okay, don't throw it out. Okay, let's go here, go here. And the people that are on the ground level, the people that are in the trenches, are the ones suffering. They're like, can someone give us direction as to what we're doing here? And the problem with that is that when it starts at the top, shit rolls downhill, and what ends up happening is everybody's lost focus. You're 100% right. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I just want to piggyback on that.
That's I definitely agree with that. That's spot on. And so, I mean, 10 games are supposedly supposed to drop this year. I don't know that those 10 games are in the bag, right, and have completed testing. So if they're in any kind of state of needing to be dragged across the finishing line, particularly with the number of projects that have come in hot, right, over the last few years at Xbox, like that's just going to be a problem. And when you're built on top of a subscription service that, maybe now even they're admitting like isn't going like it's supposed to, that level of effort is directly associated with feeding that subscription service and encouraging people to join, which, based on the fact that the numbers have been flat for 2 years, right, clearly isn't happening. So just, totally exacerbating the problem. I just want to highlight, what the dynamic's going to be on those engineering teams.
That's a great point, Logic. Falky, I want to go back to you because I'm seeing some conversation in the chat, Falky, and this is why I'm glad you're here. Maybe you could shed some light. Maybe someone could learn something from what, this question I'm going to pose to you.
It's up to them if they want to listen to learn.
Well, that's true. It is up to them. So some of the live chat here saying that one quarter paid off the whole entire ABK deal. Just remember that they'll make they'll make that back within 10 years. So
one
so if you
quarter.
Yes. And he's talking about Microsoft as a whole, as a company, not the Xbox.
All right.
Microsoft. Yeah.
All right. So, sorry. Finish pitching your question, and then I'll have my conniption.
Yeah. So explain how that math doesn't really math. Like he's saying, oh, well, Microsoft makes so much money, they'll make it back in 10 years. They're fine. It's great.
So Microsoft is more than just Xbox. Microsoft has got a number of other business units that make substantially more money than Xbox does in terms of revenue and profitability. What's been happening for the last, let's say, decade, for rounding numbers, is that those business units, such as intelligent computing and cloud computing and other bits and pieces that aren't part of the personal computing segment. So Microsoft reports 3 segments: intelligent cloud, what's the other one? The business cloud infrastructure and intelligent computing, cloud infrastructure, and personal computing. Xbox sits in personal computing with Windows OEM for home, LinkedIn, and a couple of other minor pieces, right? So it's in the bottom segment of the totem pole and halfway in the middle of that bottom segment of the totem pole. The other 2, which charge ahead and make money hand over fist faster than they can count it, also have much lower cost inputs to generate that revenue. They still have to fund their own equipment and plant and equipment replacement programs, infrastructure programs, software updates, all that sort of stuff. And up over the last 10 years, if you read their accounting policies in their annual accounts, and if you're a nerd like I do and read those things, you'll see that they have accounted for costs incurred around internally used bits and pieces like Azure and xCloud and all their infrastructure and labor associated with those plans have been accounted for when the final reports that we see in those business units. Internally, they have costs allocated out to Xbox so they can get a true representation in their monthly and quarterly reporting internally to see if they're making money or not. And this is something that I have hammered on for years, that when they turn around and say publicly Xbox has done this much in revenue, but they never tell you what their operating profit is and they never tell you what their margins are, it's because internally they're getting slammed, and when they back that stuff out, it still doesn't make money. What ends up happening is Microsoft as a whole makes a crap load of revenue and they pay all their expenses, and then they've got some money left over which goes out to pay their investors their dividends and all the rest of it. The investors expect, it's not a $3 trillion company because they've got $3 trillion in assets. It's not a $3 trillion company because they got much money in the bank. It's a $3 trillion company because of the value of the shares that are being traded on the stock exchange, because they have dividends that they pay and they pay money back to their shareholders in all these different facets. It's very complex to a degree, but trying to get people to understand that, because I actually saw I really feel for this person because they're a VFX artist that got laid off in the last couple of days. And the thing they took to Twitter was, they've got a $3 trillion budget. Why did they have to lay me off? And it took all restraint that I had to not reply to this person and go, they don't have a $3 trillion budget. The budget for the area you were working in would be lucky to be in the tens of billions of dollars. And they can't stick to it because they're blowing past it and expecting other parts of the organization to backfill it. They went and bought Bethesda for $7 billion, ABK for the better part of $70 billion. That's still not guaranteed to be theirs next year because we've got this other FTC challenge coming through. And just to remind everyone, the FTC's one of their main points was this is going to be bad for the industry because it's going to result in layoffs. That was one of their main points. Not even 6 months ago, they took that to an injunction and argued that case, and then Microsoft turned around and said, no, all good, no problems, all good. We've got the cash, we've got the funding. Big bosses have said it's all good to go, and 6 months later, it's a disaster. But just to cap off on this, when you get into the nuts and bolts of how much money the other parts of the business have been backfilling Xbox for the last decade, when they go and spend this much money to get what they've got, and a plan doesn't work out because they can't generate, and I've always asked this question, It's great to have that many Game Pass subscribers, but it's not generating a profit. It's generating revenue, but it's not generating a profit. And the margins are rubbish. They're not selling games because their core base are waiting for it to become available in Game Pass. And everyone says it's great value, but it's not generating any money in terms of profitability. It's costing more to do this than it is than they're making. So if you're looking at what they've now bought and how much it generates, and you look at that little table that's been in the last 2 quarterly reports, which says ABK's net impact, they've nearly lost $750 million in the last 6 months alone after buying that thing, which was supposed to be making money at the shareholder level from day one. Where they've made these losses is halfway up the sheet. There's no way they're going to recover what this is going to cost them, even with the other business units making as much money as they are, once you factor in how much has got to go back into those other units. So to say that they've paid for it in 1 year because of the revenue they've generated, 1, no. 2, you're an idiot. 3, stop talking.
Falky, can I ask you a quick question before BRAP jumps in there and passes it on?
I have some super chat, so I got to get to, but go ahead, Rick.
No, I just wanted him to clarify what's happening with the FTC later on in the summer. Did you say it's later in the summer in August?
Yeah, they've got an August date that they're doing that final review.
Okay, so that's what it's going to be. It's a final review on. Okay, and now is there any possibility? Do they have any power at this point to be able to overturn anything, or is it just at this point being able to lay out more guidelines as to what Microsoft can do?
No, so that the August date is the date that was locked into for the FTC to challenge the acquisition in court in front of a judge. So it's very possible that it could get unwound or quashed, or they could be asked to divest to a degree.
Okay.
Yeah, so the August date that's coming is the reason why they had that injunction at the back end of last year to try and close the deal sooner because of the time lag. But, I mean... not to sound petty, but I am surprised the FTC has not put out a tweet that said, "We told you so."
They've been asked to be quiet by their legal team,
which is sensible.
Observe and report, and make sure that you have all their paperwork in order. That's what happens to my corporation. Same thing. They said, "Don't talk." They said, "Just dictate everything you see and everything that's happening." So that's understood. Okay, thank you for the clarification. Sorry, Brad. I just wanted to know exactly what was going on.
No worries. I do need to get these super chats real quick. We have Connor Goretti, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, with the $24 pound super chat. Says Microsoft says it needs a game like Hi-Fi Rush the day after killing its studio. We need, and this is Matt Booty, by the way. This is, I think, Kofi, I think you were going to asked a question about leadership. This is the head scratcher for me too, and I often wonder how Matt Booty still has a job at Xbox. But he says we need smaller games that give us prestige and awards. And he said this to employees at a town hall today. And it's like, Matt, like Hi-Fi Rush was that game. It was well received, nominated for awards. I don't recall what awards what awards it that it won with the different award shows, but it was nominated. I know that. I just thought that was
one for music and one for art direction.
Yeah,
and it beat out some pretty big contenders to get those as well. So it's not something to be sneezed at. This game was the start of the renaissance for them.
Yeah, and it was well received. You know, it's one of those things. I remember the Shadow Drop when that happened. We were all like, "Hey, this is actually great. Kudos to Xbox for doing this. This is awesome." Everyone was kind of like clapping their hands and saying, "This is good." My Bill Clinton voice almost came out there. They're like, "This is good. This is," and then Tango closes. They close Tango. Want to grab this other super chat from CPHX38 with a $5 super chat. Thank you. Says the fact that matters is that the majority of people just aren't gamers. No matter how many screens these brands make themselves available on. We've talked about that on the show, that there is a finite group of people that are going to play video games, even if you put these on more screens. So, but that's the interesting thing, guys. I want to go back to the panel here with the Matt Booty quote and Hi-Fi Rush in particular, because even and this is the part that drives me crazy. I said this on BRAP yesterday, and I often feel like Microsoft just needs to stop talking. Just stop talking. Because every time you guys talk and you guys say something else happens, and you guys have giant egg on your face. And this is Aaron Greenberg replying to Jez Gordon when Jez was inquiring about what exactly determines success for an Xbox game these days. And actually, Jez also today had mentioned that he had heard too from developers at Xbox that they feel like in terms of what constituted success on Game Pass, that they didn't know. It was kind of like flying blindly, which is kind of interesting to hear from someone from an internal studio at Xbox. But Aaron Greenberg last April, replied, Hi-Fi Rush was a breakout hit for us and our players in all key measurements and expectations. We couldn't be happier with what the team at Tango Gameworks delivered with this surprise release. Go ahead, Falky.
Sorry, I should have been on mute. I apologize. I'm musing about that comment.
Oh. Were you shaking your head, Falky? Like, oh, jeez.
Oh, jeez. Well, I will make a comment here. There's a very distinct difference in the business models across the big three platforms. 4 platforms. Let's say Steam as a let's market Steam down as a platform, or the guiding platform for PC. 3 of those 4 sell stuff. They know what they have. They have a market that's engaged, and they will sell it. The 4th one, which is more happy to provide it, and so you can lease it, rent it, gain access to it, or whatnot, which their business model for Xbox aligns more with their business model for their business-to-business stuff. So if you've got a Microsoft as your main business software solution, where you've got an Azure back-end architecture, and you've got all the Dynamics and Outlook and Visio and all this Office suite and all the rest of it plugged in, and you're using Teams and all the rest of that crap, it's a one-stop shop, and it's convenient. It's not lacking in bugs and annoyance, and the thing only works half the time, but it's the best of the options if you're looking for an all-in-one package. But that is a monthly cost to a business, and you don't buy a license. You don't pay for it outright. You pay by the month per user, per whatever they've got access to. So it's stacked and it's built. I tried to do that with Game Pass, and found that when you try to apply a business model, because businesses have money and budgets and funding, and you try to apply that to an average consumer who just wants to buy their thing and enjoy it, that shit don't work. And now they seem to be trying to pivot back to selling, but they don't want to admit defeat in their own ecosystem because they just don't have the numbers there to support it. So they're trying to shift it onto multiple different areas. Now, Wi-Fi Rush, great game. Sell that thing. Would have been on at launch. It would have been a $30-$40 game, and would have sold like hotcakes with a decent marketing lead up to it. And it didn't have to be, purchased by a mega corporation to make that game happen. That one could have quite easily just been a partnership arrangement, which seems to be the sensible go forward here. They've spent $70 billion to buy out Activision, and $7 billion to buy out Bethesda. And that's $77 billion that could have otherwise been pumped into making content, creating games, marketing those games. And you don't need to do 150 games a year if you're not trying to fill out a subscription service. All of this stuff is not new. Everyone in this room was talking about this one way or another 4 or 5 years ago when this stuff started happening. It's the consolidation outcome has gotten to this point is just horrible.
Yeah, that's a great point, Falky. I do want to go to Xbox leadership. I've seen conversations. I've heard content creators. I was listening to Kind of Funny yesterday. They brought up Phil Spencer. B, you had the opportunity to speak to Phil Spencer many years ago. What was it like? Probably 12 years ago? Does that sound right, B? Yeah, we lose B. Maybe B's not there. Maybe he stepped away.
Oh no, I'm here.
Oh, okay.
No, it wasn't that long ago.
Okay, I feel like when you were part of the Inner Circle podcast, I wasn't sure.
It was less than 10 years ago that he was on the podcast with us.
Okay. So you've had the pleasure of speaking to Phil Spencer about all things video games. What do you think about leadership right now, with everything that's just happened within the last 48 hours, and what's happened over his tenure, the last 10 years? Do you think there needs to be a change?
I mean, I've said it for a while now. I think that they should have made a change quite a while ago. I think, similar to a lot of companies, I think it should be more of like a relay when it comes to leadership. You know what I mean? I think a lot of leaders should only be in place for a certain amount of time, and then, once you get to a certain point, then you pass off, everything you learned and things you implemented to the next guy, and he implements things and brings things to the table, and finds ways for the company to continue to flourish. And I think that's just how it should work. I think that's how most successful businesses work. I think when you have that long tenure in leadership, things start to get stale over time. And you can see that with a lot of companies that have the same leadership, 15, 20 years, 25 years, same CEOs in place. So those are companies that usually start to dwindle, over time. So for me, I thought they should have cleared house, or at least, take some of the top execs, and kind of have them move on over this last generation, because to me, I've said it since the beginning of this generation, even, the middle of last generation. I kind of saw this, what we're seeing today, I saw this, 10, 15 years ago. You know what I mean? Like, I've been saying it for a while. I've been the guy that's been called out, even on, being a co-host on the Xbox podcast. I was calling these things out, and people were like, yo, you're crazy. Shut up. You don't know what you're talking about. And long and behold, we're at this point. You know what I mean? So for me, I think, the leadership that they have in place, have no control right now. You know what I mean? I think once you get this many eyeballs on what's going on in your division, you're pretty much just handed down what's going to take place. And that's kind of what it feels like, especially just, the comments that Matt Booty made. I literally tweeted this out just a little while ago. Like, in one quote, he says that they need to focus on high impact IP. And then the next quote is that they need to focus on games like Hi-Fi Rush, smaller titles that bring them awards. Like, it doesn't make sense. He doesn't even know what's going on in his own company, and it's literally a day apart from the two quotes. So it sounds like to me it's coming directly from the top, and they're just kind of relaying the message throughout the company. That's why nobody knew what was happening when they made these closures. It just kind of came out of nowhere, and to me, the writing's on the wall. I think this company is going third party, like I've been saying for many years, and the Xbox that we all knew and loved from the 360 era, the original Xbox era, those days are long gone. And I don't think even if you bring in new leadership, that it's that's not going to change anything as far as what the roadmap is for the Xbox division, because like I've talked about many times, whenever there's a new CEO in place, I always study what their philosophy is. And we talked about where Satya, where his mind frame is and where he wants to take the company. And if you look at everything they've done throughout the company, it's always about putting their software everywhere. He's not about having content exclusive, and I've said that for many years. Mm-hmm. It's coming to fruition, and a lot of people who are still waving that green flag, they're going to be very disappointed in the next few years, because it's not going to be the Xbox that we fell in love with.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned.
Never been spoken there, man. Sorry, I was going to say, BRAP. You see what he said? What B just said about the mixed messaging, high impact titles, and then not even 24 hours later talks about smaller indie titles that with new IP or that kind of thing. You see what I was getting at? What we've been talking about. B hit it right. He hit the head right on the. You know what I mean? It was just unbelievable. I'm like, yes, that's exactly what's happening. It is this confusion that is causing causing even more confusion. Does that make any sense? I don't know if that makes any sense. It's just this mixed messaging. And when you say things like that, by the way, I just checked it out. The lead creative designer for Tango Gameworks just retweeted what Matt Booty said about we need more smaller IP or whatever, the whole thing that he just said.
Yeah.
He just retweeted that with a picture of Hi-Fi Rush.
Oh my goodness! That's what I'm saying.
And that's the lead creative designer just retweeted that right now.
It's a head scratcher when you hear him say that. 24 hours after closing that studio, it just doesn't. It just doesn't make sense. I don't. Again,
it's right here. We need smaller games that give us prestige and awards, said Matt Booty, and it was retweeted by John Johannes. John Johannes, the lead creative designer of Hi-Fi Rush, retweeted it with a picture of Hi-Fi Rush. If that's not a kick in the balls, I don't know what is.
Yeah, I want to open this question to the panel. Anyone, feel free to chime in. Do you all believe that there needs to be a leadership change? That there's, I was listening to Jaffe talk about it today, and he's like, yeah, like the leadership isn't cutting at this point. Just paraphrasing what he basically said. Of course, he tweeted out the 3 great mysteries of the world, and one of them was Matt Booty still has a job, which I thought was kind of funny. But what does everyone think of the panel there? Do you all think that it's time for a leadership change? Just given everything that's transpired, the last 48 hours, the business meeting, Game Pass stalling. Go ahead, Kofi.
Yeah, I absolutely believe that leadership is due for a reset. But my biggest concern is whoever steps in, let's say a Sean Layden or somebody who really appreciates the art form of games steps in. Now, we do know evidence that, Phil Spencer did have a creative side. I'm not going to give him a ton of points, but people have seen him play like Fallout 76 and various other games. I'm not sure if the most creative person stepping in is it's going to be an uphill battle, right? They're going to step in, and just like Phil, they're going to look up, and the rest of Microsoft is like, we run everything on subscriptions. Windows 10, Windows 11, Azure, all of our stuff is through subscriptions. We don't care about any other form of revenue. And it's a lion's den. And I would just be, whoever steps into that role needs to be extremely brave. And I just don't see that changing. Like when I look at PlayStation, because they have such a their profit margin isn't small, but compared to Microsoft overall as a company, they can rely on gamers and selling them games, and when they make mistakes, they kind of have to pivot to meet the expectations of their fans. While Xbox, just like Falky was saying, if Xbox goes full third party with like Halo, Gears, Forza, and COD, annualize the COD, pay some sort of subscription fee, Microsoft walks off into the sunset. They don't give a crap. There's no encouragement for them to say, oh, we want to be, really creative and, Hellblade 3, bigger budget, or let's bring Indiana Jones back. And there's just no incentive to do those things. So I think because they're attached to this larger umbrella, it will always be like this because of how successful Windows and Azure and some of these other components are.
Yeah. What about the rest of the panel? What do you guys? Yeah, go ahead, Logic.
Well, I think the reality, I think we should acknowledge, like if a new person gets brought in, I mean, first of all, I think there's going to be some constraints. But they're not going to be brought in to do what Phil was trying to do correctly, right? If somebody new gets brought in, they're going to get brought in to better align the business division with Satye's vision, which is going to be that it's going to be a software-centric play, or they're going to be brought in to maybe admittedly do something maybe akin to Phil, but it's going to be somebody who's going to be brought in to bring discipline and regimen and governance, which is the key sore thing that Xbox is missing. it's fine to talk about you're going to let creatives do what they want to do and lead the way. But the problem with that and the tension with game development teams has always been in most paradigms, the creative director is responsible for executing upon the creative vision, and the producer is responsible for managing schedule, budget, resources, and removing impediments. And in most cases in today's industry, that creative director tends to hold the greatest sway. They tend to be kind of the known personality. I mean, how many producers do we even know? You know, not many. Like, they're not the people who get paraded out onto the stage at E3 because they don't get to be the popular person. But in a realm where you have business metrics to meet and KPIs to hit, those producers absolutely need to be the ones that hold the reins. And I think if somebody gets brought in, again, you look at the PlayStation model, and we've talked extensively here about governance and how people have checkpoints and check gates and permission to proceed and an evaluation of where they are from a quality aspect. And we've heard the stories of people who have come up, you know, on the approach path to release and be told this ain't it and go back and rework it. That is the type of discipline we need. I talked extensively last year about people being held accountable at the project level. About let's come in. You come in, you show us an example of where you are. Let's talk about your over under burn rate. Like, that type of discipline is not there, because if that type of discipline was there, then you would never wind up with something like a Redfall. You only wind up with something like a Redfall if no one checked in on the project to see how it was doing, and that was clearly not the case. A couple other things, you know, and I wrote extensively about this last year and reposted it today. If a new CEO comes in who knows what they are doing, because you're probably going to go after somebody who's been in the seat before, there's no way in the world that person is going to sign up to any type of an agreement that has any expectation that they turn things around within this console generation. They will walk in the door and they will say, this console generation is lost. I'm not going to sign up to ridiculous expectations. Let's talk about how we're going to reset the table for the next one. So for fans, like, sure, be happy that a new person is being brought in, maybe, but don't expect that person to have any commitment to turn anything around in this generation. They're going to ride this generation out and get things coiled up. And they're going to try and find what are the strengths and what are the things that are going well. I did calculations and projected that, you know, the production pipeline was going to hit on some reasonable set of expectations of productivity by 2025. And that's about right exactly where we are heading. Minus this week's debacle, I'm not sure how that's going to affect things, because it's a totally weird situation that you were at 23 studios. You spent a lot of money to get up to 34. And within the span of 6 months, you're back down to 29. I don't really entirely understand that. And oh, by the way, prior to you went on your acquisition tear in 2017, you had eradicated all your studios, and now you seem to be dismantling and doing the same thing right over again, which I also don't understand. But, you know, that person walking in the door, right, is going to try and capitalize, like I said, on the things that are going well. And if the production pipeline is starting to hit release cadence in 2025, then that's a thing that they're going to capitalize on, and that will be their focus. And that's the thing that they're going to try to use to drive the teams forward. So I don't know that bringing in a person results in a lot of immediate change. You know, it's going to be a slow hand turning the wheel to get to where they need to be. Or, like I said, it's going to be a person who's, you know, that they're going to bring in to turn things much more so in a direction that's much more compatible with the rest of the Microsoft business base.
To add to that, it's persons. It would be a whole team change out is what they would need, and that's a 12 to 18 month embedding process to transition through the number of positions that need to be done. I would also add to that, they spent an awful lot of money buying a production pipeline that worked. They had an internal issue. They couldn't get games out the door. So they spent all that money and bought a production pipeline in ABK that worked. And for all the commentary that goes on about how everything was based around 3 major titles, they still had the ability to publish games for other studios, and they had a production pipeline that worked. And they seem to have not been able to capitalize on that and embed that into the consolidation point at this stage. So any changes that they do make going forward needs to be, how do we maximize on what we've purchased? And it's not just buying all that IP and doing all these games and spending all this money to make a crap ton of games. Keeping in mind that the market's currently saturated to the hilt with the amount of games you can play in all these different areas. Reducing your output and improving your quality or improving your experience is also another thing that needs to be considered when you're looking at a change of management. So it's going to take time, as Logic just said. It's going to take a lot of pain, and it's going to take a lot of reduction in output before they get to a point where they're going to be at that mark of being able to get back to where they think a competitive level would be. But they're a long way away from that as they stand today.
Well, I just want to add, and BRAP, I'll turn it back on to you after this. A lot of questions have been asked about, oh my God, what's going to happen next? I think the thing that I would be concerned about, seeing whether or not it's going to develop this way, is I think a large part of the risk is, even if you're a studio that gets retained, given what Matt Booty said, which again is very much similar to the statements that Jim Ryan made at the beginning of this generation, very much similar to what leadership at EA has said, which is this notion that, in fact, it's very similar to what Embracer Group has said, right? Which is this notion that we're going to start to rally around the core IP and the things that we know are the guaranteed winners. And given the things that we've seen now, I would be hyper concerned that we see more studios converted to Call of Duty support studios. And one of the reasons for that, as I keep harping on, and I kept harping on it during the acquisition, and people like to blow by it, Xbox went around and waved their junk in people's face and told them that the commitment was to putting Call of Duty on at least 2 additional platforms. And that's in the cloud and on Nintendo. And that doesn't happen with 0 people. That means people have to be put on those efforts as projects. And at the time that they made that commitment, I'll say it again, people have heard me say it before, at the time they made that commitment, they had not talked to one Call of Duty developer who was actually hands-on keyboard, who could give them any sense of what that level of effort was going to involve. And so if that's another project, already, before Andrew Wilson ran his mouth today and started building the Death Star team over at Battlefield, touting that it was the largest development team ever. So I'm not sure exactly what the size of that team was, but I'll say prior to that, the largest singular team in the industry was the Call of Duty team. There were like 1,100, close to 1,200 people. And so if this effort to put it on cloud and to put it on Switch, on Nintendo, whatever platform Switch 2, means, who knows, another 100 people, 200 people, 300 people, right? That's a significant level of effort, and those people don't go poof at pulled out of thin air. They got to come from either studios that are converted to that effort, or, and this is again what's potentially going on, or they come off of the table being wiped clear and freeing up the capital that's being paid for those people's salaries, so that you can bring in new people with different skills and different talents who can be bolted on to that Call of Duty team.
It's a great point, Logic. And speaking of Call of Duty, there's reporting from Tom Warren today as well that Microsoft's having internal debates about whether it wants to add newer Call of Duty installments to the Game Pass subscription service. Tom Warren writes that it's been ongoing internally for quite some time. Those who oppose the idea argue that Call of Duty's revenue for Activision Blizzard, and by extension Microsoft, will be undermined by a Game Pass release.
Oh, it'd be killed. It'd be absolutely killed.
Well, this has been going on. I'm going to jump in on this one because I do know something about this one. They've been discussing this since the fall of last year, of 2023, about putting it or not putting it on Game Pass. And there was discussion as well, I know as a fact, there was discussion as well as whether they were going to put it on only the Game Pass Ultimate tier. Right? As new titles, though. We're not talking about the old titles. And this is another reason why there's a civil war going on within the company, and for a multitude of reasons. But this specific one, and that's the reason why, one of the reasons why we have not seen a single Call of Duty show up on Game Pass. as of yet. This acquisition is now bordering it on, it's coming up to what, close to a year? And everybody's like, where the hell is Call of Duty? Where are the old ones? Where's the back catalog? Where's whatever's coming up? The reason for that, and then of course they're going to have an expose about Gulf War coming up after the showcase, but there is a lot of internal discussion as to how they're going to handle Call of Duty, because Call of Duty, one way or another, is a cash cow. Whether it's on Game Pass or not, they know that people are going to pay their $70 US or $100 Canadian or $100 Australian, okay, for it for the game, because they're going to play it all year round. It doesn't matter where you play it on. So anyway, the point is that that is a serious situation that they're discussing right now, and that would, considering what's come to light in the last few days and the people's lack of trust and everything else, it's going to cause a major bone of contention with a lot of people, because that was a selling point for a lot of people who were supporting the ABK deal, right? So, BRAP, can I spit off one more thing before because I got to go.
Go ahead.
I want to say something about what game. First of all, before I say my last thing about your about bringing in new leadership, what Game Logic said about utilizing different studios in order to support Call of Duty, because again, that's their cash cow. Look at the one situation of Toys for Bob, for Christ's sake. Why were they working on Call of Duty? And you wonder why the minute they had a chance to run, they ran from Microsoft. The same thing that Bungie did and a lot of other studios. The minute they had a chance to escape, they escaped because they were not Bungie, but I mean at least Toys for Bob. Completely out of their wheelhouse, but what were they? They were a support group for Call of Duty. Do you not think that that's going to happen to these other studios that they have in there, however many studios they have now? I can't keep count because it was 36, now it's down to what, 33, 32? Who the hell knows? But the point is that that's going to stunt creativity and growth for interesting and new IPs moving forward if you're too busy milking the cow. Right? And that's a major problem. And that's a major problem for moving the industry forward. So now all you've done is you've created stagnation as opposed to new and interesting IP and creativity, and moving this art form forward. Which, by the way, those studios that they let go, a lot of them that they closed up today, were doing exactly that. Interesting IP. Now, one last thing about the change of leadership before I have to leave the show, gentlemen, is that you bring in someone new, which, of course, I think it was B Money was saying, there should be like a set allotted time. Usually for a corporation, there is. It's usually within 5 to 8 years, and then there's a forced leadership change. Now, I know as a fact that a lot of CEOs work for big companies who I've spoken to, they actually signed their resignation form before they even start. So if anybody didn't know that, that's also a fact. So they sign their resignation form, they file it, and then they leave it for whatever it is. I'll make up a year, 2028. Okay, that's your resignation year. So they sign that before they even start. So when 2028 comes around, they pull that file out and say, okay, here's your resignation. Here's your severance package. Enjoy your life. Enjoy drinking, Mai Tais on the beach, whatever the hell you're going to do for the rest of your life, whatever, blah, blah, with your golden parachute. So that's the thing. Now, that being the case, let's say you take Phil Spencer out, put someone else in, as people are saying, oh, get rid of him. We got to get someone else to change it. They're not going to change a goddamn thing. Because it is no longer Xbox Game Studios, it's no longer Xbox Division that is calling the shots. It is Microsoft that is calling the shots. Now, it is abundantly clear that Microsoft Gaming is now the new is now in charge. Is now in charge, and now the policies that are put forth by Microsoft are going to continue to shape the business model moving forward. Not a new head of studio, not a new chief of Xbox Gaming. They're not going to be able to do anything. At that point, you are basically an employee. Okay? And at that point, I can also see where the business is moving forward. What I said from not day one, I'm not going to lie, I'll bend the knee that I was absolutely wrong. I was all about the ABK thing at first, and then I started realizing what was going on. And then I mentioned it a billion times on XNC. I said, you know what they're doing, Colt? I said, you know what they're doing? They're going to put this out there, and they just want to become, because Minecraft is what started this all. Minecraft is the catalyst that started all this. And then they realized and said, you know what? Let's just become the second biggest publisher, third-party publisher on the planet. Because why not? They're going to continue to put out hardware for whoever's going to buy it. right? They don't have to make 50 million, 60 million, 70 million consoles that people aren't going to buy. They'll just buy based on demand. Or sorry, they're going to make based on demand and continue to do that so that people can support their digital libraries that they have. And then eventually it's going to go to cloud, right? And then there'll be no consoles at all. No more R&D, no more departments. They can get rid of all those people. They do all that, run everything off the cloud. And that's going to be in like 10 years from now. That's where it's going to go. And you continue to be one of the biggest third-party publishers on the planet for the biggest games that they make the most amount of money. And that would be Minecraft, Call of Duty, and Candy Crush. And that will continue to do that. And everything else you're going to consider at that point, compared to those three, everything else will be considered niche. So new leadership, you're basically just an employee. Give them an employee number, stick them in the position, and just call it a day because they're not the ones who are going to be calling the shots. But anyways, gentlemen, that was a hell of a fun show, but I do have to get going. So
no, Matt.
Yeah, well, weekdays is hell for me, man. Weekdays is hell for me. So yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway,
no.
it was
Have a good night.
Yeah. You
Matt,
guys have a good night.
you.
Enjoy the rest of your show.
Hey, man, have a good one.
Yeah,
Yes,
thank
and
you, Matt.
chat, you guys were super supportive tonight. It was really nice to hear that instead of the death threats that I've been getting. So it's nice to have someone say, "Hey guys, you're doing." Oh no, dude, I'm not even kidding, man. I'm not even kidding. Just for criticizing a situation, that's all it takes for some of these insane zealots. So, it is what it is, but I will continue doing what I'm doing and speaking my truth. So, everybody, you guys have a great night, and I'll listen to the rest of the show on the catch-up. So, later, boys.
All right, Mac. Thank you for coming by. I appreciate your time, man. All right. The other thing I wanted to read from the Tom Warren article is that more interestingly, well, let's see. I lost my. Tom Warren also said that there's been some discussion of a price hike for the ultimate tier of Xbox Game Pass, but again, nothing's been finalized with that. So just interesting hearing these kind of behind the scenes conversations that are happening about Game Pass, whether or not they're going to put Call of Duty in the Game Pass, whether they're going to raise they're going to increase the price of Game Pass.
We all knew that was coming.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
Anybody who's acting surprised, you're not tapped in. That's all it boils down to. When they first announced that they were going to acquire Activision, I said it right here on this show, that the biggest thing about this is that they have Game Pass now, and that putting Call of Duty in Game Pass will drastically change the way that revenue comes in. It will no longer be the biggest IP of the year every year because the revenue splits. First of all, Microsoft has to pay for developing the game. That's not something that they were doing before. So now you're putting, like you guys said, 1,100, 1,200 people on Call of Duty. Even more now because you promised that you're going to put it on additional platforms that it was not on before. So now you have to take on that cost. And then you're going to put it in a subscription where people aren't paying for the game anymore. If you go back and look at Microsoft's top 15 games sold every year, all of them, most of the top ones in the top 10 were Call of Duty games from previous years. Not just the last year's game. 2 years, 3 years, 4 years ago. Most of the top 10 games are Call of Duty games from years ago. So now you're going to put all those games in Game Pass where people no longer need to buy them. It drastically changes the revenue that comes in from that IP. That was going to be the biggest struggle about this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you could pay $70 billion, but how are you going to get that money back?
Mm-hmm.
Remember when I said if I was head of PlayStation, I would have told them, go ahead, take Call of Duty, y'all can have it. See how that works out for you. Remember? And everybody was saying, you crazy.
Yeah.
Why would they do that?
Yeah.
Hey, you can have it. Figure it out. Because now, look at them now. They can't even figure it out. And they still announced that the game's going to be on PlayStation.
Mm-hmm.
I'd told them, kick rocks. You pay $70 billion for it. Go get your money back. Figure it out. Now they look like fools because now they can't decide if they're going to give it away for free or not.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, it's
I think
different.
The decision's been made. I'm pretty sure the decision's been made. They're not going to give it away for free.
I'm sorry, Faka. You don't think they're gonna put it in Game Pass?
I would like Xbox to be around next year, to be honest. So I hope they don't put it in Game Pass.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm thinking like I think to B's point, and Sean Layden's talked about the day and date model of putting games day and date. Strauss Zelnick's talked about it a bit too. And then you look at like, I think for them, I think the maybe the argument that's happening internally is, hey, if we put this in Game Pass day and date, that's going to help boost Game Pass numbers, and it probably would. The question is how much, and is that going to offset the cannibalization of that $70 sale by the millions and millions of people that buy Call of Duty? Maybe, maybe not. I would lean towards the not, but
all they got to do is look at the math. The game sells like less than 30 million per year. So you got to look at how many people are subscribed to Game Pass.
Is that a bad year for them?
What's that?
Isn't that a bad year if they sell 30 million? I forget what bad years are for Call of Duty. I think it's like 15 million copies or something.
I mean, that's like a good year.
A good year is 30 million. Okay.
Yeah, like around 30, 35 million that they sell in a year. So if you take the splits of what they sell on PC, what they sell on PlayStation, and what they sell on Xbox, just look at the splits. We already know that people aren't leaving PlayStation because the game is going to be there. So then you look at the splits of how many people are who play Game Pass or who have Game Pass and play Call of Duty.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they have the data. It's not like they don't know. So I mean, that's why they can't decide if they're going to put it in there, because they know the numbers. It's not like they don't know what's going on. They know how many people have Game Pass and how many people play Call of Duty, and where that data point crosses over.
Yeah,
and they know that if once they put it in there, it's going to be devastating.
And to continue on that point, and I think B's absolutely smashed it on the head again. The man is full of wisdom tonight, and we should all appreciate that. And I mean that genuinely. Everything that B said tonight is absolutely the truth. If you had 30 million subscribers, and the notion was, again, baseline maths, that you're going to sell 30 million copies, well, you would say a 1-to-1 in Game Pass, right? So then all you got to do is backfill the revenue line. You don't have to worry about scaling up and down for anything else. You're just saying, right, well, what's the revenue? 30 million copies at $70 US, 2.1 billion. So back calculate 2.1 billion in increase in revenue requirements back into Game Pass and divide that out by the 12 months. Anyone want to have a guess at what that number looks like?
I don't.
$175 a month.
$175
a month per subscriber, just to backfill one game.
Wow. And they're not gonna. I mean, they're what at? Well, what's the going rate for Game Pass right now? I forget. I know there's Game Pass Ultimate, Game Pass.
I think it's supposed to be $15.99. The problem with that, though, is of course most people are not actually paying that, so you also got to factor that in. I mean, I've personally never paid full price for Game Pass Ultimate myself, and I know people who have played even less because a large number of people, all the people who are like, I'm paid up for the next 3 years, like most of them used the deal where you were basically buying a bunch of Xbox Live Gold and then stacking it in the transition. So I mean, they're not even getting that per subscriber right now, which is also crazy to think about. So they're making even less revenue than they should be because people aren't even paying full price for that.
And then I know some people are locked. I don't know if the dollar deal has. I know a lot of people stack the dollar deal. If you remember that.
Yep.
Yeah.
You do the transition from the dollar, and you stack up a bunch of gold. And they gave you. It was what they did when you first did it. It would give you a 1-to-1 transition of your gold to ultimate, and that's why most people have it for till 2028 or something crazy like that. So that's another thing that's killing the revenue alone that they should be getting from Game Pass, that it should be generating, because most people are way under, paying, a couple bucks a month, $5, $6, $7 a month or something when you equate the deal that they got out of it. So it's like, you need so many subs at that point to make that up. But yeah, I mean, what Falky said makes sense, especially when you're talking about Call of Duty. I mean, COD alone, most people who are into COD, they're going to buy the, the top tier edition, which is basically $120 now. And then you equate a few microtransactions, let's say a reasonable person microtransactions, and they play for a couple months, maybe 3 to 6 months. So they're going to buy, the packs are pretty expensive. So somewhere between $10 to $20. So you're probably going to spend another 40, maybe $50 over time. So it comes out to about what he said about, you're getting about $175 out of people yearly who are playing COD, unless they're, they have a exorbitant amount of expendable income and they specifically spend it like crazy in COD. It just, again, but you're losing that initial purchase, right? Like I don't think I've never bought the non top tier edition of COD when I was into it. And the last time they got me, I hadn't bought COD in like 5 years. And with the Modern Warfare 2 remake, and I bought like the $120 edition. And then I still put in a couple more after that. So yeah, they got me, like he said, for about the 175 or so by the time I was done, if not a little more than that. Which is, like I said, again, stuff they're banking on. But when you're missing that initial 100, $70 to $120 plus tax sale, like that's crazy, And I mean, they have less to make up of it because, the amount that Xbox accounts for in the revenue is obviously significantly lower. I remember jokingly seeing one of the reports for Activision before the purchase went through, and Xbox apparently accounted for such a small amount of revenue that they weren't even on the chart. Like they didn't even bother putting them there.
Yeah, less than 10% of total revenue.
Exactly. Yeah. So I mean, they don't have a lot to make up, but I mean, that percentage of, what is usually about, like they said, about 25 to 30 million sold. COD averages that. Like one of the worst years they had was like 22 million or something. So that was like a bad year for them. So yeah, I mean, when you're still missing that percentage from that, plus, like you said, also accounting microtransactions, like it adds up pretty fast. So
yeah, I want to.
All right, sorry, I need to jump in. I actually have to exit. Got to go another work commitment to jump off to. But I do need to clarify something. Apologies, I misspoke earlier. It's 100. The maths was 175 a year, not 175 a month. The uplift to the Game Pass monthly subscription would be somewhere between $14.5 to $15 per month uplift, just to cover the revenue on one Call of Duty game. So that would be a permanent uplift that you would have to factor in. And when you look at what's there currently, you would also be looking at other uplifts to backfill that gap. And if you took it out, the revenue stream out, because you put it on Game Pass, just the Xbox impact alone would be nearly 900 million in revenue loss, which they've already had to count in because ABK is not making that anymore. That's why you get those slides in the presentation pack in the quarters that say that this is net impact, and then we've got to back out all this internal transactionary stuff. They're in a loss position to begin with. If they try to get market share by putting it on Game Pass and promoting it, they'll have to crank the price of Game Pass up just to cover it, or, which will upset a lot of people and it won't work, or they've got to do the loss lead there, and then they're going to blow $3.5 to $4 billion worth of revenue out their ass. Again, when you're in a loss position to begin with, and you got no way of backfilling it anymore, can you really afford to do that? That's the danger of that internal struggle of Microsoft is calling the shots to try and keep the thing alive, and Phil's complaining about not being able to compete, but Phil doesn't know how to compete. So anyway, I have to exit. I'm sorry to leave on a note like that. Thank you for having me. Apologies for being late. Lovely to chat with you all. Keep safe, enjoy, and I'll talk to you soon.
Falky, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Happy we made it to Thursday, by the way. It's always a good sign.
Yeah, no, Thursday's still a lovely day. Please enjoy it.
Thank you, Falky. Appreciate your time as always.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to mention too is there are some. This was Jeff Grubb who mentioned that that Perfect Dark, the development of that game, is not looking so good from what he's heard, and that's one of those games. I think of Perfect Dark. I think of Rare. I think of N64. I think of the Xbox 360. It's one of those launch games. And then the teaser trailer they showed a couple years ago, and we just haven't really heard that much from the initiative. Logic, we talk about the initiative quite a bit. I mean, what do you think's happening there, Logic? I know you don't like to speculate, but Grubb's saying that this thing could be having some difficulties, and we haven't heard much from the initiative.
Yeah, well, I don't think a recipe for success is to put your quadruple A studio in cahoot, who lost everyone, in cahoots with the studio whose parent is also divesting of everyone because their strategy hasn't worked. That doesn't seem like a winning combination to me. Hats off to Ryan Landis, who first was the one who kind of scratched the surface on this by seeing the lead of the initiative, that the initiative website was down, that the lead of the initiative on Twitter, I think, was where he initially saw it, no longer had the name of the initiative associated in his bio. Maybe it was on Twitter, but definitely I think on LinkedIn had removed the association with the initiative. So I mean, there's been indications that that things haven't been going well there. And again, there's been no reports and no updates. So again, the most closely associated thing from Xbox that we also got no updates on for 2 years was what was going on with Game Pass. And when we finally heard about it again, it was clear that we hadn't gotten any updates because growth had been flat for 2 years. So it's probably an indicator that things aren't going well, corroborated, I guess, by, what Jeff Grubb is reporting.
Yeah. I don't think it's going well. Based what you mentioned with Ryan Landis and who was it that was also at the initiative that left, went back to not Sucker Punch. Oh Christ, who's the developer for Spider-Man again? Insomniac. Thank you. Thank you, player, and B Money. I forget who is the B. Do you know who the guy was who left the initiative to go back to Insomniac? I forget his name.
I was actually just looking it up because I can't remember his name offhand.
I don't remember his name. Anyhow,
was it in 2022?
No, I think it was he left. Drew Murray. Drew Murray. Thank you, Miko, the live chat. I appreciate that. Drew Murray is the one that was brought over to the initiative, and I thought that was a big hire for Microsoft at the time to get Drew Murray to leave Insomniac to go to the initiative, and then he goes back to Insomniac, and now we know Crystal Dynamics has been brought in to help out, but we haven't heard anything about this game, and now Grubb's reporting this, and Mag, who is here, had actually mentioned to me that he's hearing the same thing, and it's just kind of one of those things where there's smoke, there's fire. I hope that's not the case. I was looking forward to Perfect Dark, but I'm afraid that this might be a situation, or maybe another studio that maybe Microsoft shuts down. Hopefully that's not the case.
How big is the team?
Probably less than 10 people.
Oh yeah, they're out of here.
I mean, and that's speculation on my part, but I mean, from the exodus that I had seen, the reports that people were leaving because they had gone there because the people that they brought on board were rock stars. I mean, they were high caliber, high pot talent, but they came there because they thought they were going to have a lot of input right into running their own show, and then they got there and I can't remember where the lead came out. Oh, the lead came from Crystal Dynamics, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yes,
So,
that's correct. Yeah.
So they got out there and they were treated to an environment that was much more so, this is the way we're going to do things. And as you could imagine, like high talent knowledge workers, like they don't need to stand for that. They command amazingly high salaries on the market, and they don't have to stay and put up with that. And so my understanding, they bled people. So when I'm saying, I think that there are about 10 people, I'm saying that from the exodus that I observed happening, and the fact that I didn't see new job recs and new people being hired. And there has been reference to that being one of the studios that is now basically a management studio where there's just a bunch of leads, and then they outsource the actual work, right, to things like Crystal Dynamics and contractors. So I don't think that there's that many people there at the initiative, is my guess and my belief.
Yeah, I don't know if they'll actually ship Perfect Dark, but if they do, once they do, I think they're out of here. If they don't get rid of them prior to that.
Oh wow! So you think if they ship it, they're done? There's no.
The game might not even ship. You got to think that they started this how long ago? 6-7 years ago.
I don't remember.
Heard about the initiative?
Yeah, what was the initiative launch?
2 years ago.
When was it, Kofi?
Really quick, I was just going to say, I just wanted to mention one person who we saw join the Crystal Dynamics team from Studio Bend. It was the level designer. His name is Jeff Ross. He was one of the ones who was part of that tumultuous history with Days Gone. I like Days Gone. So that's the only person I know of who I think is still part of Crystal Dynamics, but that obviously doesn't mean the game would be any better or worse under the management we're criticizing right now.
Yeah, I mean
Miko in the chat is saying that I guess Video Games Chronicle said that there are about 34 people left, and I wouldn't. Again, when I said 10 people, I'm total guess. So, I mean, order of magnitude wise, right, in terms of a team that was expected to grow to be, 200-300 people. 34%, about 10% of that body seems like within the ballpark of what I would expect.
Yeah, and it was initially revealed December 10th, 2020. So that's when we saw that JPEG, and that's all we've seen since.
Right. So we've known about the studio for at least 6 years,
and then it's been about.
And then they were working on it prior.
Yeah, and it's been about 4 years that they've been working on the game then, or probably longer. The reveal and everything, but
a little bit longer than that. Yeah.
Oh well, I hope. I really hope that look, Perfect Dark fan right here. I just hope it doesn't get canned. But we'll see.
I hope not. Not after all that time.
Yeah. No, we'll definitely see. But all right, gentlemen. It is past 11 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and that's all I have for topics right now. Somebody just told me to play Stellar Blade. I'll feel better. Okay. Yeah.
It's phenomenal, so I can't disagree with that person.
But I do want to thank our guest this evening. Want to thank Mag, who was here earlier, and Falky, he was also here and just left a few minutes ago. Also want to thank everyone in the live chat. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. Please do me a favor, smash that like button. Helps people find the channel. And if you're new, subscribe, hit the bell notification so you are alerted when we go live. And again, we also want to thank the panel here as well. B Money, Nate, Game Logic, and Kofi. And B, I don't know if you want to be found, but let everyone know they can find you.
You can find me everywhere. Same name, B Money 101. I appreciate the great conversation tonight, fellas. Great panel, great guests. Hopefully I'll be here next week, but we shall see. Other than that, man, just keep gaming, man. We got to stay positive. A lot of negativity going on in the gaming industry right now, and it's sad to see so many people lose their jobs. It's something that seemingly will continue, but as consumers, as fans of the genre and the industry, all we can do is continue to support these teams by purchasing games and the content that's associated with them, and hopefully, they'll continue to provide us with the content, that we love so much. Otherwise, it's going to be pretty scary out there. If this is the last few years are any tell of what we should see in the future, it's going to be pretty scary. So support your game, support the hobby that we all love, and hopefully it'll keep rolling. Otherwise, we're heading towards the wrong direction.
Thank you, B Money, and Nate. Thank you again. You do have the best gaming setup. Just show people that picture if they doubt. Well, I don't know what people were doubting. I forgot what people were doubting you about, but just show them the PC.
No, somebody said they were upset because I was laughing at somebody who was talking about Ghost of Tsushima coming to PC, and having to sign in, to the PSN to play Legends, and they were like, "Oh, well, we got other stuff to play over here on PC, so who cares?" And I was like, "All right, well, go play that then," and just okay, whatever. Like you act like somebody hurt because you don't want to play, allegedly. So somebody was talking trash. They quoted that or something. It was like, "Man, this guy is like, all over PlayStation or whatever. These ponies don't know nothing about PC like we do or whatever." And so I quoted what he said with a picture of my setup, and I was like, "Yeah, me and my 4090, and entire PC setup, essentially." And gaming on PC since the 90s, don't know anything about PC. Tell me about the wonderful world of PC gaming. And yeah, needless to say, he definitely did not respond, and got straight embarrassed. And I was like, people don't get enough of not reading the bio at the very least of people they talking to, because he definitely had the wrong one. And yeah, it'll be a while before he tries that nonsense again.
That's
like
funny.
I was like, people stay trying me, man.
Hey, you should have just taken a picture and just showed it to him and end a discussion. But no, Nate, thank you for joining us this evening. Really appreciate it. If you want to be found, please let everyone know where they can find you.
Yeah, man. Just at the real Nate again. On Twitter. Like B Money said, man. Gaming. Unlike some people in these gaming streets on Twitter, I'm actually about that. I enjoy that. And it was good to be on a panel with a bunch of people who definitely also enjoy that. So, yeah, man, you can find me there. Like I said, posting Stellar Blade clips like I did earlier, enjoying RPGs and, probably almost every genre on this planet, man, just enjoying gaming. And hopefully, we get to say that in the future because, man, it's looking crazy right now.
Yeah, I think we will. Maybe that's a conversation for another show, but I definitely think we will. Game Logic, I'm assuming you want to be found, but I'll leave that up to you, sir.
No, I really don't want to be found this week. There's just a lot of I don't know what I want to call it without being overly harsh. There's just a lot of foolishness going around this week. Yeah. I think I want to use my time to not be found, to instead to just touch on one brief thing. We talk frequently, particularly BRAP and I talk very frequently about like what are the indicators of the downfall of this society, and how much longer will it be before everyone is like the people on Wall-E who are in like the floating cushion chairs and like can't move because they've just totally become like not just physically lazy, but lazy to the point of like not critically thinking. And I do want to say, like, as this topic in particular has gone around, but also like all the way back through like Redfall, I think and I often talk about how in this country in particular, like it's clear that like state education systems no longer teach like civics, so that people understand how government works and how the world works globally, how international diplomacy works. There's just a clearly missing links right now in people's like understanding of the world. I think the thing that has been highlighted to me is it is quite clear to me that whatever people are being taught these days about like the basic tenets of leadership, like comes from like watching Hogan's Heroes and Private Benjamin, and I mean the shitty one, the TV show without Goldie Hawn. Like the lack of understanding of like the basic tenet of leadership that you can delegate responsibility, but you cannot delegate accountability. And this effort to say that the things that have gone on this week, I mean, I alluded to causalities that happen in a larger corporate structure, but at no point did I ever say, and will I ever say, that like the GLT at Xbox squarely shares in the blame, right, for what has gone on. And there is such a thing as a thing not being your fault, however, you still being to blame, meaning that you may not have been, it may have been Satya or Amy Hood that said, hey, you got to make these cuts and you got to get to this bogey, right? That's not optional. This is not a discussion. This is not a democracy. Hit the bogey. That may have very well happened. But the people who went out and had to execute upon that are still the people who are accountable. And this effort to say things like Redfall wasn't Phil Spencer's fault, Redfall wasn't Matt Booty's fault, that was Bethesda, they're on their own. Whatever happens at Activision is Activision. Like, I don't know what freaking other planet that you people are living on, or whether it's a generational thing or whatever, but look, I personally think that that's coming a lot from a younger generation, and you guys are going to get out here to the workforce and you're going to learn, right? That is not the way the world works. That is not the way people respond to leadership. That is not how people line up and rally behind a person, like a person who passes the buck and says, and reports to their own person that they work for and says, yeah, I would have done great if it weren't for these knuckleheads, right, who work for me. That's not leadership. And I don't know how it's being taught in today's world, but the leadership of Xbox is responsible for everything that happens at Xbox. Whether it's a bad game delivery, a late game delivery, bad PR, bad marketing, the mess that Aaron Greenberg does where he says stuff where he's totally tone deaf, Matt Booty's missteps today with getting the email out, that is all squarely on the shoulders of Xbox, and there is no way for them to pass that buck. So people can be out here brand defending and console warring and being in love with plastic boxes and do whatever they want to do. But what you guys do not grasp, and you're not going to have a conversation with me about, is that somehow you have a better grasp of leadership than I do. No, not at all. You guys aren't being taught to read Letter to Garcia or learn the basic tenets that Charles Lejeune and William Halsey and General Patton didn't run around and say that, they had bad things happen right during wars because the knuckleheads behind them were not doing their jobs. That's not the conversation you have with either your leaders or your followers behind you. So, end soapbox. Sorry.
No, those are all great points, Logic. Thank you. And last but not least, Creative Kofi. Kofi, if you want to be found, and I'm assuming you do, or maybe you don't, let everyone know they can find you.
Man, I'm kind of glad that I feel sick. Otherwise, I think I would have been a lot more spicy with hot takes. But we all agree that we're seeing another shift from Microsoft, and I don't even want to call them Xbox anymore. This is just Microsoft-controlled entity that happens to have some really great selling IPs, or ones that get a lot of what they call it, interactions, right? What's their metric now that they measure? People playing games. So, as usual, you can catch me at Creative. That's right, engagement numbers. You can catch me at Creative_Kofi on Twitter, on X. There are some great import games that will be coming out this summer. Renatus that I was talking about before is among them, so I definitely will be posting some of those games. Right now, it's about catching up on all things Stellar Blade, and I'm still playing Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, so I'm definitely, kind of hiding from posts about Rebirth or anything like that at this point, but having a good time.
Yeah, we'll have to get together and discuss Rebirth.
Yeah.
So, all right, that is it for us tonight. Thank you so much for hanging out with us this evening. Please, again, hit that like button if you're new. Subscribe, hit the bell notification so you're alerted when we go live. Please go out, play video games, support your developers, buy the games, have fun playing video games. Ultimately, that's what it's all about, and we'll catch you next time. Thank you.